Hey everyone, so this is the first video for our series Habits, which is going to be a series dedicated to making sure that we can make a habit out of getting to know God more. That's something that I think happened during this whole time of the pandemic, especially the earlier part where we were isolated from one another, where we couldn't go to school, we couldn't go to youth group, we couldn't meet with our small groups, and a lot of us tried our best, but some of us didn't do a very good job of staying connected to those things, and it made it really difficult to stay connected to our faith. So I think it's really important that we make it a habit to spend time with God. And that's what this series is going to be all about. And this lesson specifically is going to just challenge you to spend a little bit of time each day connecting with God to try to make that thing a habit. I want to start by talking about how easy it is to let something just kind of fall away from us, something like a goal. So I had a dream when I was a kid to be an actor. And not just to be any actor, but I wanted to be an actor like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I loved watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I loved the action. He was awesome. He was this big, huge guy. He had this awesome accent. His movies were exciting. And I wanted to be exactly like that. I loved Arnold Schwarzenegger movies so much, but I wasn't allowed to watch most of them because they were rated R. So I would find them on TV where they were heavily edited. I would record them back when we had to use a VHS. I would stick a video a tape in the VCR, and I would record it, and then I would take that VHS, I would get a piece of paper or some cardboard, and I would make a case, and I would draw what I thought the cover of the movie would look like. I loved Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I wanted to do everything I could to watch them. I wanted to be just like him, but as time went on, I realized that acting takes a lot of work. Acting takes a lot of investment, and I wasn't really willing to put in that investment. But I did little things like join the drama team at church, and I loved getting up there and doing skits, but it just kind of fell away and I stopped doing it. And I would say that I gave up on that dream before I'd even finished middle school. It's amazing to me how quickly something that is a passion one day can become non-existent the next day. And we're going to talk about how that can kind of apply to our faith life. So think about situations that you've been in. Like, have you ever been in a situation like that? You had a big dream, you had an idea, or you had a goal, you were super passionate about it, and then you just let it fall. Maybe it was being an artist and you drew pictures, but then you drew a little bit less, and then you lost your sketchbook and you didn't get a new one and you just kind of let it fade. Or maybe in the more current times, you wanted to be a YouTuber or you wanted to be a vlogger and you recorded something, but then didn't really want to go through the process of editing it, so you just kind of let it fall to the wayside. And then you started making TikToks, but that got kind of boring, so you stopped doing that. And again, that dream just faded. Maybe you wanted to be an athlete, but practice was really hard, so you gave up really quickly. And if you're there, you're not alone. That's kind of something I went through as well. The quickest way for something to go from super important to kind of forget about it is for it to be out of sight, out of mind. So that's what it's called when we just lose sight of something. It's not here in front of us. It's not present, so we just forget about it. And the truth is, this doesn't just happen with hobbies and interests. It happens with our relationships. It happens oftentimes with our relationships where you have a close friend, you really want to stay close to that friend, but then you start to drift apart, you stop spending time together, you stop texting, you stop Snapchatting, and then you just realize that the relationship fizzled. Now, I would assume that many of you faced that problem during this pandemic, where you had a really good friend at the beginning of the pandemic, but then you lost touch with them, and then you start asking these questions that spread seeds of doubt in our mind, like, does this person still want to be my friend? Are they mad at me for something I said? Did they care about me in the first place? Did they replace me with someone else? What happens with us in a dream we want to accomplish but end up abandoning is the same thing that happens with friends that we want to stay close to but end up drifting apart from. We have an idea of how things want to be, and then we lose focus on that idea and it falls to the wayside and it fizzles out. Now, here's what worries me. I think that we're all struggling with that when it comes to our faith. Many of you had a strong faith a year ago, and that faith may have gotten a little bit weaker because we've never really made it a habit to connect with God. Now, being connected to God can be really difficult because God is invisible. God seems far away. It's challenging to figure out how to talk to him, and you wonder if you did something to create the distance between you and God. Now, whatever idea you have of what you think a relationship with God should look like, maybe it's not happening, and it feels a bit like the goal or the friendship that fell to the wayside. Now, when Jesus lived Religious leaders always asked him questions. They loved to ask him questions, but not necessarily to get the answers, but to try to stump him, to try to trick him into saying something that was sacrilegious or that they could use as fuel against him. So there are these religious leaders who come to Jesus and they ask him this question. They say, what is the greatest commandment? And again, they're asking him, hoping that he'll mess up, but he gives them the perfect answer. He says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. So in that moment, he gives them the answer that they would have expected. He gives them the answer they want to hear, but he doesn't tell them how to do that in that moment. Now, later on in John's gospel, he's recording an important conversation between the disciples. Jesus knew that while he was there for them in that moment, that he was not going to be visible to them. He would still be with them, but he wouldn't be visible to them like he was. He wouldn't be sitting in front of them forever like they were used to. So he needed to give them some more information. He needed to give them illustrations that would start to lead them to develop their faith even when he wasn't there. So he says this in the book of John: I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, this kind of sounds dated to us because we're not a farming culture necessarily. So some of you might not think of things in terms of vines and branches and water and fruit and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to try to put it in our terms. So perhaps this statement would be a little bit more relevant. I am the power outlet and you are the cord. If you remain in me and I in you, you will power many devices. Apart from me, you can power nothing. Now, the thing about a power cord is it only sends electricity if it is connected to the power source. So most of us have a lot of stuff in our houses that we have to plug in: TV, coffee pots, Xbox, curling irons, all that kind of stuff. The list could go on for days. But all of those things are essentially useless if they're not connected to a power source. We're going to talk specifically about phones. Think about your phone. It's an amazing device. We can use it to call people. We can use it to Snapchat people. We can use it to do our homework. We can use it to look up information. We can use it to play video games that are way beyond some of the video games on systems that I grew up with. But that's only if the device has power. The second a device loses its power, it's a brick. It's completely useless. It can't do anything other than maybe be a paperweight. So if it doesn't have power, it's useless. If we're not connected with God, I'm not going to say we're useless, but we're not reaching our full potential. We're not doing what God intended for us to do because we're not reaching people for him. So we can do nice things. We can be good people, but we're not fulfilling the purpose that God has for our lives if we're not connected to him. When we're connected with God, we can do amazing things. We can love our family better. We can serve our family better. We can make wiser decisions. We can pursue God's plan for our lives. We can change the world if we are plugged in to the power of God. You can do all of these things, but only if you are plugged in to God. And also, and this is really important, connecting with God helps us know him better. Connecting with God helps us know him better, but connecting with an invisible God can be difficult. So here's what we have to do. We have to create a habit out of spending time with him each day. There are a lot of ways that we can do that. And like I said, this particular lesson is just introducing that idea. We're going to go farther into that each week to learn exactly how we do that. But there are options. Maybe you could listen to worship. Maybe you could go for a walk and pray. Maybe you can write down some of those prayers and spend some time journaling. Maybe you can read devotionals in your Bible or on the YouVersion app, or maybe you can watch videos on YouTube or have fellowship with friends. There are a lot of ways to connect with God, but if we don't make it a habit, it's going to be just like those relationships. We're going to fall away because there's no magic formula to connecting with God. We have to take the time to make it a habit. If we make it a habit, it's there, it makes sense, and it happens. Here's the last piece of scripture I want to share with you before we end. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. It's from the book of James. I believe that to be true. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. If you get to know him better, if you make it that habit, you will live a better life that is closer to him. You will live a life filled with the knowledge of him, the wisdom from him, the truth from him, his authority in your lives. It might not always be perfect, but it'll be a life where you are blessed and where you just understand so much more about what is in store for you. So the challenge this week, and I'm going to leave you with, is spend 15 minutes a day doing something that focuses you on the Lord. Next week in the series, we're going to talk more about how to do that specifically. But this week, just try something, anything, to spend 15 minutes getting to know the Lord better each and every day. And I would love to talk with you about this. So you can reach out to me. We're having youth group in person each week, so you can come to youth group. But if you're still not comfortable with that, you can always reach me by email. You can call the church and we can talk through something. I would love to hear about what you're doing, how you're challenged through this. But just remember that. Spend 15 minutes a day with the Lord to get to know him better. And we'll continue talking about this next week. Have a wonderful week, everybody.